muscles that join that limb, which is pretty straightforward. And we'll review when we look about at the upper limb. Where it joins is complicated. And we sort of need to understand that a little bit. And a lot of times people are going to have low back pain, they're going to have hip pain. It's rare to have knee pain and foot pain without having some other joint involved, especially over time. Because this limb is organized in what's called a closed kinematic chain. So that means when my feet are planted on a surface, I'm weight bearing on my feet, all of those joints move at the same time. And if I destabilize one, like bending my knees, there has to be increased stability in the joints above and the joints below. So if I have a funky, wacky, unstable ankle, I will have issues above that in the same leg and also the opposite limb. You can't avoid it. And how many people have sprained their ankles? Or they have loose ankles or whatever. Now the ankle usually doesn't ache. It's usually the knee or the hip. And the ankle's hard to do anything with if it's unstable because there's nothing there to exercise. So external stabilization like a sleeve or something might be the choice. So knowing the anatomy and understanding the limits of it as well as the possibility is really important.
And the key term thinking about that closed kinematic chain where ankle, knee, hip, especially when we're doing postural assessment where both feet are on the ground. I'm standing, both feet on the ground. If I move, both knees, both ankles, and both hips have to move, right? Now I can go, now we go from postural to gait-based stuff because now I can go into a single leg based stabilization with the other leg doing more mobilization. So the shift will be from posture and both legs being flat while standing to then basically standing on one leg while moving the other. So we have two ways we can assess, right?
That's what I want you to do.
Posture and gait. And the leg, that's what that's where we're gonna be staring at. What is the ankle and the knee and the hip doing while they're standing? And what are each of these parts doing while they're walking? And trying really hard to think about all of it at once.
So, two other factors. I want to introduce Logan in his teaching position as model stability. You're doing very well, Logan.
Very good.
You're forever on camera. Something with teaching, by the way. You have to hear the material and see the material over and over and over and over. So this is not Logan's first trip around the sun with this, but he probably needs 4 or 5 more before he feels really confident, because that's the way you learn. All right, so I lost my profundity.
So, structure.
All right.
Okay.
So it's not just bones and joints where bones come together and the cartilage and the ligaments and the muscles. There's 2 other really, really important thingies in here that make it work. Blood that moves in tubes and nerves. And everything is wired up via pre-programmed, innate mechanisms monitored primarily by your cerebellum, the brain, about posture and gait. So you can see that with a little person. When they are trying to learn to walk, they start out as a quadruped, they crawl, and then they work and work and work and work to stand up, don't they? And they have horrible balance, and their head's too big, you know, and so they don't walk on the sagittal plane, they walk on the frontal plane, because that's where your balance is. If you're gonna stand on one foot, it's frontal plane, adductors and abductors that do that. So if you've got problems on the outside and the inside, where the muscle groups are not communicating well through the nervous system, you're not gonna feel balanced.
So in order to stand up effectively, you need all these structures, especially the adductors and abductors, to be able to stabilize these joints so we can stand up in gravity and everything can hold itself together. Then once you start moving, your movements, just to kind of simplify some of this process, your movements happen in the sagittal plane using flexion and extension.
Yep.
If we're going to talk about walking, sagittal plane, flexors and extensors, flexors and extensors. And while I'm doing that, the muscles that fire in the frontal plane, the abductors and adductors, are trying to keep me from toppling sideways so I can keep moving forward. So one thing that helped my brain with this is visualizing a trapeze artist that wants to move down that rope, and they have big weights on either side to help keep them from falling off the rope. So we're always trying to not fall off the rope. Flexors, extensors tend to be your big movers, while your abductors and adductors are your balance, and they assist with stabilizers. Your rotators are a big part of stabilization. Bringing that back to some of your assessment and what you do, does the person have a mobility problem or a stability problem? Can they walk okay, but they have bad balance? Do they have bad balance, but can walk okay? And that can give you a thing to look at. Looking at them standing, looking at them walking, looking at them standing on one leg versus another. That can give me lots of good information, just those three things. Can they walk, can they stand, can they balance?
And obviously, when we get into the upper limb, we're gonna talk about the counterbalance and the innate rotation that happens along the same idea as Luke was talking about the tightrope walker with the big pole that helps them move forward. So we're going to do our first assessment. Everybody stand up. Pay attention. You've been sitting there. Were you a little stiff? Did you have to pull yourself up? You know, was there something that you had to catch? You're doing a fine job.
Thanks.
Notice anything? What was the first thing you wanted to do?
Stretch.
Which way? Up and back. Up and back. So how had you been? Forward. Alright, so the first thing you wanted to do was to activate the opposite movement so that you felt okay through the full range. Very good. Okay. Then, the first assessment we're going to do is, can you stand on one foot? And if you can't, where do you feel that being iffy? In your butt. Who said that?
Foot.
Oh, in your foot.
Foot butt. So in the foot would look like, look Sally, the ankle kind of, the foot moving around a lot versus maybe somebody doing this.
Alright, who else when you stood on one foot, where did you feel it? I'm feeling it in here.
I feel it, like glutes.
Okay,
Right here.
so that's, if you feel it,
I feel it.
if it's working enough that you're feeling it, then it's probably trying to do something. Did you just fall over, Renee?
I did.
It's alright.
Well, you guys shut your eyes and stand.
That's
Fair enough.
exactly
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
works for Leader Dog. And so, and I had a long-term relationship with somebody that lost their eyesight. Their gait is disturbed because they're seeing with their feet now. And or they're navigating a cane, or they got a dog pulling them. And so if that's their mobility pathway, if that's how they do it, their body is going to habituate so they can do that. And then maybe over time it will like get frozen in that too much. And that's where massage can really help, because it can take a compensation and bring it back to where it's functional and not a problem. So think about that in terms of a population you might reach out to. So do that. Stand on one foot and then close your eyes. That's going to give you information about how your vestibular system is working. Little bit more difficult? All right, now open your eyes and stand on the other foot. Where do you feel it?
Money.
In your knee. Aha. So we got a butt on one side and a knee on the other. How common is that?
Probably pretty common.
Where do you feel it?
Well, on the one side, I feel it like on my butt in here, but on my injured knee, when I go over here, I feel it in my foot because it's less stable.
Yeah. All right. So another, we'll work with butt and knee. Okay. So I'm going to ask butt and knee a question. All right. You're coming in for a massage, and I'm going to ask you. This is an interview process, part of the assessment. I'm going to ask you to show me what bugs you. And I'll start with, can you put your hand on it? Okay, all right. So I've got a location. I don't have to figure this out, they know.
Right.
All right, and what aggravates it?
Standing too long, but my right hip is also off.
Uh-huh.
I feel that. So I had surgery on this knee, so I babied this knee a little bit more, I think. So my right hip is off.
Yeah, probably.
Mhm.
Okay, good job.
And what we have here, by the way, is knee on the left side and then hip on the right side.
Mhm.
This follows, just to clear up some terminology that can turn into mud in people's brains, is kinematics versus kinetics. So kinematic is about that whole, the joints are stacked on top of one another, and you can't move one without the other. If it's closed means they're all stacked. Open means they're not stacked. So if I'm standing, my legs, the joints of my legs are in a closed kinematic chain, but my arms are open. I can move my wrists without it moving my elbows. So that's kinematics. Kinetic chain has to do with the process of how it translates up the whole body. So she's following a pattern that thankfully fits that model very nicely. Now, how many key central nervous system chakras are there? 7, magic number 7. That's something that I used in my head, but there's 7 main points for the kinetic chain. Ankle, knee, hip, low back, and then you follow the chunks of the spine. Bottom of the lumbar spine, bottom of the thoracic spine, bottom of the cervical spine, then to the base of the skull. That's your 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you can follow that, but that goes in a zigzag. So in this case, let's just assume that she has more problems than she's indicating. There's a right ankle problem, a left knee problem, a right hip problem, a left low back, and you keep going up. It'll keep doing this zigzag back and forth, up and down the body.
And it may skip. So I'd have to come up here with yourself.
People can't surprise you, but it gives you a little bit of a roadmap. If she said, my key problem is my left knee, where would I have wanted to look and search? For other stuff that she might be compensating.
Next jointed area.
Above or below on the opposite side.
And then
So like
here,
the left hip.
yeah, so have you got any symptoms in here? How about over here?
Sometimes.
And then here.
Oh,
Yeah.
Aha!
So
There it is, I have
So
that.
Sandy was just searching low back and then neck and shoulders, and asking, are any of these feeling like they have problems too?
Alright, so now, by using these patterns, and we'll review that one with you, by using these patterns, you can start to make some assumptions. And those assumptions can help me make the general massage both more efficient with the assessment and more efficient with the intervention.
And some,
So, for example, I may squeeze something hard here, create a sensation that feels familiar, and have her move her knee back and forth. Because I just connected the dots. Okay, thank you for your little self. All right, so Logan is patiently holding this thing
the
up.
leg model,
Good
all
job.
all the muscles of the leg
He
right
needs a lampshade on top.
there. Yeah, right?
So the whole pelvis job, all the muscles around the pelvis, you can sit back down if you wanna compress your butt. The pelvis muscles have two jobs. The inside ones, called intrinsic, their main job is to hold the leg into the pelvis and then become part of how the whole thing attaches onto the torso. So the joints we have involved with this, I'm gonna turn it around, is, nice job, you did that really well. Right in here, we have the sacroiliac joint. And that one fits like this, and it moves just a little bit like that. And it has to do that when we walk, but it also has to set in and be really stable when we stand.
I'm gonna interrupt you just for a moment, so we're gonna break, and if we can come back and restate
Review
that
that,
for the next
okay.
part, just because now in the next part, we're gonna go through all the joints and the structures.
Okay, sounds good.
So I'm gonna stop,